All right, so greetings. I am Dan. I am a Agile coach and management consultant, and book author, and itinerant experimenter in all things social. So I called my sister one day, and she's 4 years older than me, and of course she raised me in some sense, so I'm very close to her. And she worked at a large company, and I talked to her every couple of weeks, and I called her up, and I asked her how it's going, and she said, not good, it's not going good at all. In fact, it's bad. My company is implementing and going Agile, Scrum, and it's awful. I said, well, what's awful? Now, here's a person that I love who, you know, is having the thing that I do for a living implemented in her company, and she's really like animated. And I'm like, well, what's the story? And she says, well, the story is that I feel like a child. Every day I must march into this room, I must answer 3 questions, and it's summarily ridiculous. We're doing the same exact thing that we did before. What's changed is the words that are used, and Agile is used like a blunt instrument every time I have a question. And I'm like, I felt so bad about this, like, awful. Like, this is not the business that I'm in, and I certainly don't think I'm in that business. And then I realized that I myself was party to what was in essence a mandated Agile adoption. That management called me in where I was currently working with a client, and they never really asked the folks what they thought, what they wanted, or what they felt about what Agile was and what it might mean to them in their livelihoods and their families, right? And I just had a big aha on that day. And I realized that really the way that we mandate Agile adoptions is actually broken. It's very bad. It's not Agile at all. And the true Agile thing is about learning and play, right? So play and learning are really, really interconnected. Right? So children are rapidly learning. That's why they take long naps, right? Because they have so much to integrate after 3 hours of being awake. And then when they get into the point where they're playing with others, they're engaging in social learning, and they're doing a lot of experimentation. And they're playing, right? But it's serious play. They're learning about how to be in the world, right? And that's what Agile is all about. Agile is all about learning how to play with being great at something. So I've been thinking about this for 3 years, and I have some things to share with you about that. And I believe I have until about, like 20 up or so? Like, how many more minutes do I have?
Oh, yeah, good. 20 minutes is good.
20 minutes? Okay, so I can go until 25 up.
Yeah, or you can take a little over if you have more.
Okay. All right, so this is sort of a grainy picture of an open space meeting. People sit in a circle, and there's a facilitator. And the facilitator describes the rules of the game. And the game is all about being free, right? So the meeting has a theme. Like at your company, it might be like, what does it mean for us to be Agile at company X? Or company X is your company. And then all these folks that are here because they want to be here, because nobody made them come. They get an invitation, and they get about a month to think about it. And then they come to this meeting to explore the theme. What does it mean to be Agile at our company? Right? The facilitator lays out the rules. The rules basically explain that you don't have to do or be anything that you don't want to be at this meeting, that nobody can make you do anything, and that it's on you to get the learning that you think you can get on this day, right? And that nobody's responsible for your learning except for you. And then folks come forward and they grab a piece of paper on the floor, and they grab a marker, and they write their issue. So they write their issue about how, like, some of them might be negative, like, we will never be able to do continuous integration, the 10 reasons why. My name is Dan. And up it goes on the wall. And then someone else comes up and says, I want to talk about how we might be able to do great Scrum, and there's 3 conditions under which great Scrum can occur here, otherwise we will fail. And my name is Mary, and that goes on the wall. And then people come forward and the facilitator gets out of the way, right? So the facilitator moves out of the way when the folks are moving. And in the end, you can't really see it here, but there's a grid on the wall over here. This is the marketplace. So it's a big, huge grid. The rows are meeting spaces, the columns are times, and at the intersection of a time and a place, you take the session that you want to gather your tribe around, and you stick it in that intersection of that time and that place, and then you're required to come and gather some proceedings. You don't have to be the leader of the meeting, you're the convener, and you gather the tribe that is interested in that topic, and you have a 1-hour session, and that goes on throughout the day at 1 o'clock, at 2 o'clock, and 3 o'clock. There might be 5 or 6 sessions that are going on. And this is a very interesting thing. So I've been playing with this in Agile Adoptions, and I found out some things. In 2009, I read this book, Spirit, Transformation and Development in Organizations, from a man named Harrison Owen. He is the formulator of the open space meeting format. So all meetings, it turns out, in my world, are games. So every meeting is a game, so every meeting you attend is a game. Open space meetings are wonderful games to play, and this book describes how to use open space to actually develop a very great Agile adoption. And I want to read just the beginning of this, the prologue. He says, "I have written this book for friends and colleagues, known and unknown, who find themselves in the midst of a transforming world and are resolved to look beneath the surface to the underlying source of change. This source, which has become manifest in the forms and structures of our organizations, I call spirit. It now seems to be transforming in new ways. Although my subject is spirit, my intent is totally practical. For the issue at hand is, how do we make sense of spirit, and perhaps more important, how do we facilitate this journey towards a new form?" So in this book, he talks about how the spirit can be up and the spirit can be down in your organization. And just as an aside, I want to point out that the first organization we all have membership in and experience with is our families. And we import a lot of this experience into our experience in organizations. I just want to kind of show you the table of contents here. It's a very deep book. This book, if you read 10 pages, that's a lot. And if you spend 3 days integrating it, that's probably pretty good. So this book is the sort of source of my interest in open space, where in this book I learned that open space is not actually for arranging conferences. That's how it originally was formulated, but the reality is that it's used to process the grief that's associated with change. So change generates a lot of grief, and grief is something that humans need to process. So when you go back to your organization and you think about your Agile adoption, think about the grief that people are feeling and how they have trouble processing this as a group, okay? So open space takes people in the despair phase and it tips them into the hope phase, okay? The vision phase, the phase where they go from despair to hope. That's what open space is all about. So periodically, your organization can do basically a kind of cleanse. Every 6 months or so, you do an open space meeting. You won't need a coach to continue your Agile transformation. You'll be able to do it together without an external authority telling you what you should do. Okay, because the organization has all the answers it needs. It doesn't need help from the outside except in the very beginning to get started. Okay, so now I want to move to my slides. I'm just going to bring some quotes up from the slides and then take some questions. I'm going to describe Open Agile Adoption very briefly, and then we'll just open it up. This book is required reading for anyone who's serious about Agile adoptions. This book has been freely available as a download since 1986, when it was first written by Harrison Owen. He went on to write 8 other books that are all based on this book. Okay, he could not find a publisher for this book. He self-published it, and on their kitchen table they sent out copies. He and Ethel and his wife sent out copies when he wrote it in 1986 as part of their story. The time for this book has come, okay? This book has an awful lot of interesting stuff in it. Now I want to take you over to some slides, and I'm just going to kind of run down these slides. I want to show you a couple of pictures from Open Space, and then I'm going to skip over some slides and get to some particular quotes. So here's a small session of some folks at my client in New York. After the opening, they're engaged in dialogue around a specific topic. And up here you can see the various types of artifacts they've created during their session. Here's a large open space event. What's going on here is folks are getting ready for the opening. And we've got the posters with the 5 principles and the 1 law. The 1 law in open space is the law of 2 feet. The law of 2 feet says that you are responsible for your own learning. It is not rude and in fact required for you to get up and leave if you're not getting the learning that you expect or are looking for. And that this is legitimate, and that you may exercise your freedom as an individual to do as you please. Okay, here's another, this is the opening of a public open space event in Boston. Has 230 people in it. This is actually just playing with matches. Public open space events are just like playing with matches compared to the power you can get with open space inside an organization, when you can tip the organization from here to there. Okay, as a culture architect or culture hacker. This is the facilitator and the folks who are assembled. That's about, maybe a quarter of all the people. Many of my friends here, they are kind of getting into it and getting the opening here. They're starting to build up the marketplace. This is another small group at a client session. Here's what the marketplace looks like if you do it inside an organization. A, B, C, D, and E are spaces. And then this is like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. The folks will tend to go work from upper left to lower right, and they build out their own agenda. Here's another small session. And here's the folks, after they've built out their agenda, kind of horse trading and figuring out, like, hey, could you go over here because I'd like to go to your session, but I want to go to this other one at the time you have it right now. Would you move it over there? And then there's some blank space over here, and that looks really good. Would you be willing to repeat that session down here at 4 o'clock? Because I'd really like to go to it, but I want to go to something else at 1 o'clock. Folks who have convened sessions are not required to do anything that anyone says. Okay, it's all based on volitional free choice, willingness, and freedom. Okay, so these are the folks, in a tight spot for an hour or so, talking about a session, an idea that's really big for them around their Agile adoption. Open Agile adoption starts and ends in open space, and in the middle you do 4, 5, or 6 iterations, which I'll just tell you what it is right now. It's play. It's not experimentation. That's just the sanitized term that we use in the Society for Play. We're going to play with Agile, right? We're going to open and play. We're going to then execute on play, and then we're going to close and play. Okay, and this is how we find out how to do good Agile, because we don't need external authority to tell us what we should do. We already know what we should do. Okay, so I'm gonna skip a few slides here. I'm just gonna kind of skip really quick to get through a few slides because we don't need these. This is all just, shameless hype. Let's take a look at some of these quotes here. This comes from a man who works for ThoughtWorks. Okay? Imposing an agile process on a team is completely opposed to the principles of agile software and has been since its inception. This is a quote directly from a signatory of the Agile Manifesto, Martin Fowler, who wrote a blog post, Agile Imposition, where he explains one of the key features of agile methods is that they are oriented around people. They recognize that people and how they work together is the primary factor in software development, and then processes are secondary. Okay, now this is a highly heretical statement at a time when agile is going mainstream and all manner of sales and marketing and the selling of things is taking place. Things in boxes, things in packages, that you, as if you can buy agile off the rack, or that you can get it in a box or it comes in a spread. Okay? So here is the agile, some quotes from the Agile Manifesto. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools, the very first value of the Agile Manifesto. Okay? Here is yet another quote from the great Martin Fowler, who said in 06, by the way, 2006, he says, imposing an agile process from the outside strips the team of the self-determination which is at the heart of agile thinking. I mean, how much more clear can he be? Apparently he asked himself this question also when he wrote this blog post, because later, near the end of his missive, he says, so I hope I've made it clear that imposing agile methods is a very red flag. So what this probably means is that we have a pandemic of mandates and implementation of agile through a command and control process, which is just wrong on its face. Like, how many people are required to come here? Who was told by someone in authority to come here and came in compliance with authority's mandate? Is there anyone here? Mandated collaboration. Just sit with that for a minute. Isn't that absurd on its face? Okay, so this is actually what we do. It's harmful. It's not in alignment with the spirit of agility, which is about play. There's nothing playful about a command. There's nothing playful about a sentence that ends in a period, right? In open space, the theme always ends with a question mark, because the question mark opens space. I'd like to show you some of the concepts around Open Agile Adoption. First of all, Open Agile Adoption begins and ends in open space. So I want to show you just a brief diagram of that.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
In open space, when everybody's having these discussions about what's going on, I assume there's some type of action items or focus that they're going to work on, or direction they're going to move in at that point. Is there a method around it, or do they just leave in agreement?
Well, in Open Agile Adoption, in the interest of time, I don't explain open space. So that's not what this is about. If you're interested in open space, there's a lot of documentation about what I would call the canonical form of open space. It does have a structure. It is a structured game. The purpose of the game is to get people talking. Okay, so here is the diagram, a really unprofessional handwritten diagram. Your Agile adoption begins in open space and it ends in open space. In the beginning, the coach coaches. At the end, the coach leads. In between, there's iterations. These are play. We open the open space and invite the folks to come into the meeting, and then we invite them to play. These are iterations. These are retrospectives. These are daily scrums. Okay. In between, we do at least 4 iterations, a minimum of 8 weeks, and we encourage the folks to experiment. That's a sanitized term for play. Leadership engages in the saturation of storytelling about celebrating the positive aspects of what's happening. This creates a joyful space where it makes those who aren't joyful somewhat uncomfortable. Okay, and the folks gain direct experience under very light guidance from a coach. Okay, and then in this opening meeting, they're told that this is actually all going to be inspected and subject to adaptation, and we're going to look at it in the closing open space. So they know when they come into the opening open space that the closing open space will feel the same exact way. And they're told right here that the coach is leaving with one foot out the door from the very beginning. Why? Because they're responsible for their own learning, that's why. Okay? All right, very, very simple. If we go down a little bit more, what we find is that after we do this 1 or 2 times, we can now, in January and July, institute a passage rite, and this is coming directly from the Spirit book. We install it in the cultural calendar of the organization so that now the Agile transformation is not dependent on any one coach or any one leader. So if a champion leader who's highly authorized leaves or gets ill or something, the organization just catches a cold. It doesn't catch pneumonia. Why? Because in January and July we do a recurring open space where we do a kind of a rehydration of what we value, a remembering of why we're here, and a kind of cleanse where we purge whatever toxins we might have created during the last 6 months. We process that and integrate that learning, and this becomes a closing of the old chapter and opening of the new chapter. Okay? So that's how Open Agile Adoption works. Now there's some concepts in Open Agile Adoption that I want to bring up and make plain to you. And what I need to do here is go and show you some of these words. I've written a brief handbook. The handbook is 58 pages long. This is the introduction. And there's some words here that I want to bring to your attention. And this will be the close of my presentation. And we will then open it up, honoring the time limit. Okay, so here's some of the things that Open Agile Adoption is leveraging. Okay, so Open Agile Adoption is building on the wisdom of cultural anthropology. So I am bringing cultural anthropology into the whole idea of the Agile adoption. The concept here is that when you engage in a lot of learning, what you're really engaging in is a lot of transition and what's called liminality. So liminality is a state of being that takes place during transitions. You're not here, you're not there, you're in no man's land. So if you've ever had a death in your family, if you've ever had a child born in your family, for a period of time, your family is liminal. It's not here, it's not there, it's in transition. This is exactly what happens in our Agile adoptions. Our organizational enterprise family is going through a liminal, what's called a liminal state. It's a very stressful state that can cause all manner of psychological distortions. Okay, this is a word you won't find in the dictionary. If you're interested in this word, look up the author, Victor Turner. Okay, the next thing is the passage rite. So for millennia, tribal cultures throughout in modern cultures throughout the world have used passage rites to help to handle the stress of liminality. Okay, so during painful transitions, passage rites are installed in cultures so that people can find their way from here to there. During the passage rite, which is what Open Agile Adoption institutes, you generate feelings of community because people at all levels of authorization in your organization are learning together. And in that sense, they're all equal. They're all also equal in the sense they're all learning. So communitas is the very spirit of community. It's generated through the experience of the passage rite. People feel community with each other as they go through the liminal state together, going from here to there in a passage rite. Okay? So is this resonating with you? Like when you experience agile adoptions, can you relate to this liminality that I'm talking about? Okay. So every passage rite has a master of ceremonies. The master of ceremonies role is occupied by the Agile coach. It's a transitional role. The coach is leaving. In Open Agile Adoption, you are allowed as the Agile coach to facilitate the first open space, but you may never facilitate again. Because you are now in the family. When you're with them for months, you're in their family. You now are somewhat invested and you're no longer qualified to function as the facilitator of the open space. But you are qualified to participate in the open space with that group, right? As the master of ceremonies. So you bring in a friend or a trusted confidant to function as the facilitator. Master of ceremonies and facilitator are two separate things. The master of ceremonies is you as the Agile coach throughout the passage rite, and you facilitate once and only once. Okay? In Open Agile Adoption, there's a chapter of learning. It begins and ends in open space, and in the middle there's iterations that are basically playful and direct experimentation. And then open space, I already described as a meeting format. Open space is a designed experience. It is a meeting that generates dialogue and inquiry and feelings of connection with people. People who come to open space meetings have to have two qualifications. They need to be passionate about the theme, and they need to feel responsible. Because without passion, nobody cares. And without responsibility, nothing gets done. So through the invitation process, we bring the people who have passion and responsibility around the theme into the meeting. And then the open space proceedings are generated. Each individual session in open space has a convener. The convener is responsible for making sure proceedings are collected, like who came to the thing, what was said, what the ahas were, what the next actions were. Open space proceedings need to be created without delay. People need to leave with them that day. They need to be in their inbox in a PDF that day. So if I work this with your organization, I bring an assistant with me, and he or she works with me. We build out the proceedings in service to that organization. So as soon as this thing is over, bam, nobody can say it never happened. 48 pages, 50 pages of open space proceedings with text and all the artifacts rendered into the document. Okay? The open space sponsor is a qualified person, the highly authorized person who authorizes the space and the time for the meeting. So everyone knows this isn't some underground insurgency. This is legitimately authorized by duly authorized people in the organization. And the open space facilitator is a servant of the group during that time. Every meeting creates a culture. And open space is no exception to this. The open space facilitator is responsible for doing something called holding the space. The open space facilitator helps the microculture actually grow during the day from the beginning to the end. So the meeting is bounded by time, it's bounded by space, and there's a small culture that's created. It's based on the structure of the meeting and the way the facilitator holds the space open for dialogue and inquiry. Okay, so now you know the core things that you might want to know about Open Agile Adoption. And I need to go back one. Whoops. I've got many blog posts in here on Communitas, on passage rites, so there's much more to it. What I want to do right here is just bring the diagram back up to provide some context. oh, looks like something's happening. So eventually that will end. And I think I'm officially done. I went a little bit over. So, is it? What do you want to do now?
It's up to you. You can carry on until you're ready, and then we'll take some questions. And that
I'm happy to take questions at this point. Open Agile Adoption is a free thing. It's not, you know, it's not licensed. It's not packaged. It's not reconstituted. It's not packed in oil. It doesn't come in a box, and you can't get it at the store. You can just go and get it freely off the web and just go and do it yourself. Refine it, make it better, and then improve it, and then give it to other people. And basically use it to create a rapid and lasting Agile adoption that's not dependent on internal or external authority.
How does, you know, when you have groups like this that are, you know, supposedly open and you know, encouraging communication, open communication, how does the impact of the fact that you've got people at different levels in the organization? You might have a vice president of development or whatever in the group. And how do you get over, you know, people's concern about sort of saying the wrong thing in front of the boss?
The boss and everyone else who's at the open space, first of all, I'm not going to prohibit authority from being in the room in the open space. That would be a serious mistake. Some people say, well, why don't we have bifurcated sessions where you have beginner, you know, intermediate, and advanced? No, we want to mix all the people together, so we want all the folks to get the benefit of the experience of these essentially tribal elders. How these tribal elders behave in their meeting is their call. That's up to them. However, the facilitator will make sure that if anybody tries to hijack the space and close it